My husband was violent for years. I just want justice, Thea Rowen declared, her voice steady as cameras flashed outside San Pedro General Hospital. The gathering press hung on her every word as she painted herself the victim of an abusive marriage gone wrong. Then came the moment no one expected. Two police officers approached from behind, their badges catching the afternoon sun. "Thea Rowen, you're under arrest for the attempted murder of Arlen Rowen." The handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists. Confusion crossed her face. "Attempted? What do you mean, attempted?" That's when Detective Vargas leaned in close. "He woke up this morning. He told us everything." The blood drained from her face as the realization hit. Her husband was alive. The man she had struck twice with a metal rod and left bleeding on their kitchen floor 9 days earlier wasn't dead. The carefully constructed story she'd been selling to neighbors, police, and now the media was about to collapse. In the quiet cul-de-sac of San Pedro, California, the Rowens had seemed like the ideal couple. Both ex-Navy, disciplined, raising 2 young boys in a neat suburban home where Christmas lights went up promptly on December 1st and trash bins never lingered at the curb. But what happened in that kitchen revealed the dangerous truth that had been building for years between those walls. This isn't just a story about a failed murder attempt. It's about how the person who appears most broken might actually be the strongest. How the quietest voice in the room might be silenced not by weakness, but by calculation. What really happens when the front door closes and no one's watching. Sometimes, the most dangerous predator isn't who you'd expect. Welcome back to Altar of Secrets, where true stories meet the kind of choices that keep you up at night. Shout out to all our amazing subscribers and viewers. Here we follow real accounts shaped into dramatized narratives, not just to shock, but to reveal the kinds of patterns most people miss until it's too late. So if you haven't already, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and drop a like if you're here for stories that leave more than just an impression. Let us know where you're watching from. We're building a community that looks a little closer at what we think we understand. If you've ever thought, "I would have seen that coming," or "that couldn't happen in my neighborhood," stick around. These aren't just stories. They're warnings, they're reflections, and sometimes they're mirrors, babe. Now let's continue with the story of Arlen and Thea Rowen, a marriage built on shifting sand. San Pedro, California, a community where neighbors wave across driveways and children ride bikes until sunset. The kind of place where Christmas decorations become friendly competitions and everyone knows whose dog barks too much. In this slice of suburban normality lived the Rowens. Their 2-story home with fresh paint and manicured lawn blended perfectly with others on their street. Their twin boys, Kai and Lennox, were known for good grades and polite manners. Nothing about the family's appearance suggested trouble. "They seemed so put together," said Marion Kent, who lived 3 doors down. Arlen would help everyone with home projects. He built half the neighborhood's shelves and fixed countless leaky faucets. Both Arlen and Thea brought military precision to their household. Their matching Navy careers had given them a shared language and structure that impressed others. When they hosted summer barbecues, guests noted how they finished each other's sentences and moved around each other with practiced efficiency. It was like watching dancers, another neighbor recalled. They knew each other's moves without speaking. What nobody saw was how that synchronicity had warped over time, how their shared military experience created 2 very different civilians. Arlen embraced routine as comfort. After 12 years of service and 2 deployments, he craved stability. His job inspecting cargo ships at the Port of Los Angeles suited him perfectly, structured, important, predictable. His sons became his mission, their stability his new purpose. Thea, however, found civilian life unbearably dull. The Navy had given her rank, respect, and purpose. Without it, she felt invisible. Each new job, security guard, bartender, correctional officer, left her more frustrated than the last. "She'd talk about her Navy days constantly," said Thea's former co-worker, like her real life ended when she took off the uniform. The signs were there for anyone looking closely enough. How conversations at neighborhood gatherings went quiet when the Rowens arrived, how their sons grew increasingly solemn, how Thea's smile never reached her eyes, how Arlen watched her constantly, not with affection but with caution. But nobody was looking closely enough. Nobody saw beyond the family portrait they presented to the world, until the night the truth couldn't be contained any longer. The cracks in the Rowen marriage didn't appear overnight. They formed slowly, like ice splitting pavement, barely noticeable until the damage was done. Year 3 of civilian life marked the turning point. Arlen had settled into his port inspector role, earning commendations for his attention to detail. His colleagues described him as steady and reliable. The same qualities that once made him an exceptional naval officer now made him an exceptional father. Arlen lived for those boys, said Marco Jenkins, his supervisor at the port. He'd worked double shifts to be off for their school events. Every conversation circled back to Kai and Lennox. Thea's transition told a different story. Her resume grew increasingly scattered, 6 jobs in 3 years. Each position started with enthusiasm that quickly soured. She needed constant movement, constant challenge, explained Donna Wright, who briefly worked with Thea at Pacific Security. Routine made her restless, then angry. She'd pick fights just to feel something happen. That restlessness followed her home. Neighbors began noticing raised voices from the Rowen house. Arguments that started small, about bills, schedules, parenting, grew into explosive confrontations. I heard glass breaking one night, recalled elderly neighbor Walter Simmons. Next morning, Arlen was sweeping up and told me Thea had accidentally knocked over a shelf, but the cuts on his arm told a different story. As Thea's frustration mounted, so did her aggression. What began as shouting escalated to throwing objects, then to physical attacks. Arlen, trained in combat but committed to peace in his home, never struck back. Instead, he developed another strategy. Without Thea's knowledge, he began documenting everything. A hidden journal detailed incidents with dates and descriptions. His phone secretly recorded arguments. A small camera disguised as a clock captured footage of Thea's outbursts. He stored duplicate evidence in his workplace locker, at his brother's house, and in cloud storage. He wasn't building a case for revenge, explained Officer Vargas, who would later discover this evidence. He was creating protection for his sons. Every note ended with the same question: how do I keep the boys safe? The violence occurred in cycles. Explosion, apology, calm, tension, explosion again. Each cycle shorter than the last, each outburst more intense. When police visited the Rowen home, 3 times in their final year together, Thea always called them first. She'd meet officers outside, composed but tearful. By contrast, Arlen appeared stoic, almost cold, a reaction officers often misinterpreted as guilt rather than trauma. It's a common tactic of abusers, explained Dr. Marianne Chen, domestic violence specialist. They weaponize emotional expression. The more visibly upset person often appears more credible to authorities, while trauma can make genuine victims seem detached. The situation reached a critical threshold when Thea began mentioning divorce, not as a mutual solution, but as a threat. If you leave, she told Arlen during a recorded argument, you'll never see those boys again. I'll make sure of it. What Arlen didn't know was how literal that threat would become. Thea's actions were more than just moments of anger. They were part of a deliberate pattern designed to control and confuse. Each time the police arrived, she played the role of the vulnerable wife flawlessly. Her voice cracked with emotion, her eyes glistened with tears, and she clutched her wrist as if it bore fresh injuries. But the reality was far more complicated. Arlen's hidden evidence told a different story. Photographs showed bruises in places that didn't match Thea's explanations of accidental falls or household mishaps. Secret recordings captured her shouting threats and insults, her voice rising with fury and desperation. One recording caught her screaming, "You think you'll take the kids and walk away? I'll bury you first." The intensity in her voice revealed a woman desperate to maintain control at any cost. Despite this, the system often sided with Thea. Male victims of domestic violence face unique challenges: stigma, disbelief, and a lack of resources. Arlen's quiet demeanor was mistaken for guilt or coldness, while Thea's emotional displays won sympathy. Neighbors whispered about the frequent police visits, but rarely questioned the story they were told. Arlen's response was quiet endurance, paired with meticulous documentation. He wasn't seeking revenge, he was building a shield for his sons and himself. Every photo, every recording, Every note was a piece of armor against a future he feared but hoped to avoid. He stored copies of evidence in multiple locations: his workplace locker, a trusted friend's house, and secure cloud storage, ensuring it would survive even if Thea tried to destroy it. Thea's manipulation extended beyond the home. She wove a web of influence, convincing friends and family that Arlen was the abuser. Some turned against him, believing her carefully crafted sob stories and controlled displays of emotion. This isolation was part of her control strategy, making it harder for Arlen to speak out or find support. Officer Neville Vargas, who would later lead the investigation, recognized these patterns immediately. "It's a classic case of emotional and physical abuse masked by performance," he said. "The real victim is often the one who stays silent, collecting proof while the abuser controls the narrative." The tension in the Rowen household was like a powder keg, waiting for a spark. Thea's threats grew more direct and chilling. During one recorded argument, she warned, "If you leave, you'll never see those boys again. I'll make sure of it." The stakes had never been higher. This dangerous mix of violence and manipulation set the stage for the night everything changed, a night that would expose the truth and challenge every assumption about victim and perpetrator. Before we move deeper into this intense story, just a quick one. Have you ever noticed signs of trouble in a relationship that others missed? Maybe a friend or family member was struggling silently, and you only realized it later. Share your experience in the comments below. What warning signs do you think are easiest to overlook? Your experiences could help someone else recognize danger before it's too late. If this story is gripping you so far, please hit the like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to light. The evening began like many others, quiet on the surface, but charged with tension beneath. Thea's frustration had been building all day, fueled by suspicions and fears that Arlen was planning to leave her and take their sons away. She paced the living room, her mind racing, until the pressure became unbearable. When Arlen arrived home from work, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Thea confronted him with accusations, her voice sharp and relentless. She claimed he was plotting behind her back, trying to turn the boys against her. The argument escalated quickly, words cutting deeper than before. Arlen tried to stay calm, hoping to defuse the situation. He reminded her of their sons, of the life they had built, and pleaded for peace. But Thea's anger was a storm that couldn't be calmed. Her frustration exploded into violence. In a sudden, terrifying moment, Thea grabbed a metal rod from the garage, the same one Arlen used for strength training. Without hesitation, she struck him once, then again. Arlen collapsed, his head hitting the cold kitchen tile with a sickening thud. For a moment, the house was silent except for the faint sound of Arlen's shallow breathing. Thea stood frozen, panic and calculation battling inside her. She wiped the rod clean, shoved it into a storage bin, and dialed 911. Her voice was shaky but controlled as she reported, "My husband attacked me. I hit him back. I think he's dead." When Officer Neville Vargas arrived, he found Thea on the porch, tears streaming down her face, holding her wrist as if injured. Her story was rehearsed, too perfect, but Vargas had seen enough to sense something was wrong. Inside, Arlen lay unconscious, bleeding from a head wound. His pulse was faint but steady. Vargas acted quickly, providing first aid and calling for paramedics. He also noticed a small phone tucked under the kitchen table, a device Arlen had hidden to record incidents. Vargas secured it as evidence. The house showed no signs of a violent struggle. No overturned furniture, no broken glass beyond the rod incident. Thea's story didn't add up. As paramedics rushed Arlen to the hospital, Thea's carefully crafted narrative began to unravel. The man she believed was dead was fighting for his life, and soon he would speak. Neighbors who had heard the commotion that night recalled the tension in the air. "It was like a storm had passed," said one. But no one knew what had really happened until the police showed up. Thea's calls to the police over the past year had always painted her as the victim, and many had believed her. But this night was different. The evidence was mounting against her, and the truth was about to come to light. Officer Vargas's instincts told him this was more than a simple domestic dispute. The recordings, the lack of physical evidence supporting Thea's claims, and Arlen's condition all pointed to a darker reality. Thea's actions that night set in motion a chain of events that would expose years of hidden abuse, manipulation, and fear. It was the moment when the quiet suffering of a man determined to protect his family finally broke through the silence. What followed would challenge assumptions about strength, victimhood, and survival, and reveal the true cost of living in a house where love had turned to danger. Arlen's condition was critical. Doctors placed him in a medically induced coma to reduce swelling in his brain and give him the best chance to recover. The hospital room became a place of quiet tension where every breath and heartbeat mattered. Meanwhile, Thea seized the moment to shape the story. She spoke to neighbors and reporters, casting herself as the innocent wife caught in a violent marriage. Her voice was soft, her tears convincing, and her narrative carefully crafted to win sympathy. But Officer Neville Vargas wasn't convinced. From the moment he arrived at the Rowen home, something didn't sit right. The small phone Arlen had hidden under the kitchen table was a key piece of evidence. It contained recordings of arguments, threats, and moments of raw emotion that painted a very different picture than Thea's public story. One neighbor's doorbell camera added to the case. It captured audio from the night of the attack, including raised voices and sounds of struggle. Another witness, Mrs. Hallow, a retired teacher across the street, recalled seeing Thea dragging something heavy into the garage days before the incident, something that matched Arlen's reports about threats involving workout equipment. Vargas reviewed police reports from previous visits to the Rowen home. Each time, Thea was the caller, presenting herself as the victim. Arlen's silence was consistent, but his evidence told a different story. The pattern was clear. Thea's emotional displays masked a history of aggression and control. The investigation uncovered layers of manipulation. Thea had convinced friends and family to side with her, isolating Arlen further. Her carefully maintained image was cracking, and the truth was beginning to emerge. Detectives also discovered a sealed record from Thea's past, a violent altercation during her Navy service in Texas that had never been made public. This incident added context to her escalating behavior and raised questions about her ability to handle stress and conflict. As the evidence mounted, the case against Thea grew stronger. The recordings, witness statements, and physical evidence painted a picture of a woman who had used fear and deception to maintain control over her family. Officer Vargas described the investigation as a turning point in his career. "It showed me how complex domestic violence can be," he said. "Sometimes the victim isn't who you expect, and the truth is hidden beneath layers of lies." The community watched closely as the story unfolded. Many were shocked to learn the truth about the couple they thought they knew. The Rowen case sparked conversations about domestic violence against men, a topic often overlooked or dismissed. As Arlen fought to recover, the investigation moved forward. Thea's carefully constructed world was unraveling, and justice was within reach. The question remained, would the legal system recognize the truth and protect the victims before more harm was done? 9 days after the attack, a quiet but powerful moment unfolded in the hospital room. Arlen's eyes slowly opened, weak but alive. The medical team watched closely as he whispered a single weighty phrase to his nurse. "She lied." Those 2 words carried the weight of years of silence, fear, and hidden pain. It was the first crack in the story Thea had been telling for so long. The following day, Arlen met with detectives. Though his voice was soft and fragile, his words were clear and unwavering. He described the secret recordings he had made, the bruises hidden beneath layers of clothing, and the threats that had haunted his family for years. When officers played one of the audio files, the room fell silent. Thea's voice rang out, furious and desperate. "You think you'll take the kids and walk away? I'll bury you first!" Arlen's reaction was calm, but his eyes told a different story. Relief, as if a heavy burden had finally been lifted from his shoulders. Unaware that Arlen had regained consciousness, Thea was preparing for a press interview outside the hospital. Her confident demeanor faltered when officers approached and read her rights. The shock wasn't just from being arrested, it was from realizing her husband was alive. This moment marked a turning point. The man who had endured years of abuse was no longer silent. His voice, once quiet and cautious, now carried the power to expose the truth. Thea's carefully constructed world began to crumble, and the path to justice was finally clear. Arlen's strength in that moment was more than physical. It was a testament to resilience and hope. His willingness to speak out shattered the silence that had protected Thea's lies for so long. This awakening was not just about survival. It was about reclaiming control and demanding accountability. The story of Arlen and Thea Rowen challenges us to rethink assumptions about abuse, strength, and the courage it takes to break free from a cycle of violence. It reminds us that sometimes the quietest voices carry the loudest truths. The courtroom was tense as the trial began. Arlen, still recovering and confined to a wheelchair, sat with his sons by his side. His presence was quiet but powerful, a living testament to survival and truth. Thea appeared calm, her expression unreadable. Her defense attorney argued that the attack was a tragic accident, a case of self-defense gone wrong. They painted Thea as a woman pushed to her limits, overwhelmed by fear and desperation. But the evidence told a different story. The prosecution presented the photos of Arlen's injuries, the secret recordings capturing Thea's threats, and the testimony of neighbors who had witnessed the couple's volatile relationship. Officer Vargas detailed the inconsistencies in Thea's accounts and the pattern of manipulation she had maintained for years. Arlen's testimony was clear and composed. Despite his physical weakness, his words carried weight. He described the years of escalating abuse, the fear he lived with daily, and the moment Thea struck him with the metal rod. His calm delivery contrasted sharply with the emotional turmoil behind the scenes. The jury listened intently as the recordings played in the courtroom. Thea's voice filled with rage and control, her threats unmistakable. The impact was undeniable. Friends and family who had once doubted Arlen's story began to see the truth. The carefully constructed image of Thea as the victim crumbled under the weight of evidence. After deliberating, the jury returned a verdict: guilty on charges of attempted murder, domestic violence, obstruction of justice, and filing a false police report. Thea's sentence reflected the severity of her actions. The court emphasized the importance of protecting victims, regardless of gender, and acknowledged the courage it took for Arlen to come forward. The case sparked conversations beyond the courtroom. It challenged stereotypes about domestic violence and highlighted the struggles male victims face in seeking help and justice. Arlen's story became a beacon for others trapped in similar situations. His decision to speak out inspired advocacy groups and brought attention to the need for better resources and support for all victims. The Rowen case was more than a legal battle. It was a turning point in how society views abuse, strength, and survival. Justice was served, but the journey toward healing and awareness was just beginning. As Arlen rebuilt his life with his sons, he carried a message of hope, that silence can be broken, truth can be heard, and no one should suffer in the shadows. Life after the trial was a new chapter for Arlen and his sons. The scars from the past remained, but so did a renewed sense of purpose. Settling in Long Beach, Arlen focused on healing, not just his own, but that of others facing similar struggles. He began working with a nonprofit dedicated to supporting men escaping abusive relationships, a group often overlooked in conversations about domestic violence. His experience gave him a unique voice, one that resonated with many who felt invisible or dismissed. Arlen's story sparked important discussions in the community. People started to question long-held beliefs about abuse and victimhood. The idea that men could be victims and that their pain deserved attention gained traction. Through speaking engagements and interviews, Arlen emphasized the importance of documentation and preparation. His careful collection of evidence had been crucial in securing justice and protecting his children. He also highlighted the emotional complexity of abuse, explaining how silence and calmness don't always mean strength or guilt. They can be survival mechanisms. The Rowen case challenged stereotypes and encouraged others to look beyond appearances. It reminded everyone that abuse can take many forms and that help should be available to all, regardless of gender. For Arlen, the journey was far from over. Healing was ongoing, and rebuilding trust with his sons required patience and love. but he faced the future with determination, knowing that sharing his story could save lives. Thea's conviction sent a clear message: manipulation and violence have consequences, and no one is above the law. As the community reflected on the case, many began to recognize the signs they had missed and the importance of listening to all voices. Arlen's experience serves as a powerful reminder that survival is not just about enduring, it's about reclaiming control and finding strength in truth. His story continues to inspire change, offering hope to those still trapped in silence and fear. Arlen's story teaches us that abuse doesn't always look the way we expect. It reminds us to listen carefully, to trust the quiet voices, and to recognize that strength can come in many forms. Documentation, patience, and courage can make all the difference when facing danger behind closed doors. What warning signs do you think are easiest to miss in relationships? Have you or someone you know experienced something similar? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your insight could help someone else see the truth before it's too late. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to Altar of Secrets for more real stories that reveal the hidden struggles behind closed doors. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Until next time, remember, sometimes survival means speaking up, and your voice might be the key to saving a life. Stay safe, stay aware, and thank you for joining us today. See you on another story from the Altar of Secrets. Bye for now.